Welcome to our continuing conversations with Joe Visconti. Joe, you're our man on the street. What's going on out there?
Your guess is as good as mine. I was just waiting to go on the air and I had my little prayer book. I have this little prayer book, Times of Tribulation, I've always read. It's got all the prayers in it from whatever. So it's Catholic and all the saints. And as I'm reading this, maybe I've been in politics and in Steiner stuff too much, but I'm reading all the prayers and some of these St. Thomas Aquinas. And and if you read, as we've all done, the prayers, or if you step away from it for a while, then you come back and you look at it as a materialist, if you would jump into that, you'll say, what are they talking about? Oh, Jesus, oh, believe in me and Mary and the saints, and you will this and I will that. And I thought about our modern world that we live in today. I don't think I need my glasses. I'm not going to read anything. And I said to myself, who would believe this in material science or politics or what the world has become in the last, I'd say, 10 years? Who would believe any of these prayers? No, I do have to read something really quick, really short, because this is important. It can be just random. It doesn't matter. Um, Prayer to Jesus crucified. My good and dear Jesus, I kneel before you, ask you most earnestly to engrave upon my heart a deep and lively faith, hope, and charity, true repentance. And then there's other saints that people are praying to. Over here, Alfonso Ligori, O most holy immaculate virgin. So all of these saints, Thomas Aquinas, I have them all in here, and they are smart men, and they're asking you, they're pleading to an invisible thing in our time that wouldn't be real. Is it even real? I mean, we weren't going to go here today with how we were going to open, but I just kind of sat and went, well, no wonder what's wrong with the world. To believe in that, are the hearts of men anymore able to believe in that? Is it paganism? Is it old school? I mean, I do in my heart, I understand it, but without Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy, you can see the gulf between that old world of believing in the saints and all the invisible saints and angels or people that died that aren't here anymore we're praying to, and we're getting oil from their tombs and bringing it home, so our parents who can't go to the tomb of the martyrs. If you think about that, just like you landed and you're only born yesterday in America or something, and in the West, we have moved so far away from faith and belief in something invisible, something that has a consciousness to respond, because these prayers and these novenas are all about, here's my problems, here's my troubles, could you help me out? Huh? They're in another world. There's no like things there. How do they know what you're talking about? It would be easy to dismantle from the left's point of view all of this as nonsense and archaic and old. And since that's all been taken away, it really has, except for the few, whether they're Muslim or they're Jewish or Catholic, whatever the faith is, the people that are really still hold on to those things, it's becoming less and less and less of a belief in this invisible world where people that lived as saints before, or angels, or Jesus, or anything, is anymore. And I didn't intend to open with this as we discussed yesterday, but really hit me hard as we look at anything in life, any issue, I don't care what it is, education, medicine, the belief in there's some miraculous cure found buried in stone or silicon, or therapies that are created in, from Monsanto to Pfizer, to believe in that, which is an invisible thing. And then all of a sudden there's discovery. That's where our world is right now. It will believe in those miracles of technology, but it won't believe in the miracles of the spiritual world, that they're even real. And we're becoming more and more considered, and I think very soon, as though we're cuckoo, and that we're just believing. And they're allowing us to go to our churches for a time. But I think after a point, it's going to be like, don't tell your kids to go there, because you can't prove that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. You can't prove any of these things, and you're warping their minds. I mean, I can see it coming as I just looked at myself. So I'm putting it out there for the listeners out there to go, have you, it's really something. So everything we talk about today, in juxtaposition to the time that we have lost faith in the spiritual world, or as John Barnwell told me today to call it, the supersensible worlds.
Absolutely, Joe. Absolutely. And it underscores the reality that in this world, it's a duality. So they'll say there's spirit and then there's evil. But they'll say the spirit's invisible. You have to believe it because of faith. Though, in fact, there is no record of Jesus of Nazareth until recently. They recently found a tiny little footnote in some Roman book of records that said that there was a Nazarene who claimed to be the Messiah. The Nazarene Jesus claimed to be the Messiah or something. Just one little tiny phrase. There's no pieces to the cross. There's hardly any of that. But the trick of the devil is, if I don't show my face from the unseen, then you're not going to believe in the unseen of the spiritual. And so it's this dichotomy that happens. But nowadays, evil has become so evident because we've all been pulled across the threshold of, really, it's the threshold of death, but it's the threshold between the physical world and the unseen world. We're all pulled into that now. And so we can see the evil, but now the evil just comes out and says, hey, evil is good. So you actually have religions preaching evil.
Yes.
Some of the most evil people in the world. I was just going into this with someone else the other day saying, look at what Pope Francis tells us. Open borders. Let the migrants come in. Let the invasion continue. Everything he's saying, if anyone believes it and does it, causes death. He is a death monger. He's not there for goodness. And he's basically deprecated every single dogma and doctrine in the Catholic Church on purpose. And yet people still think that he's a holy man. But this is the dichotomy of our age. And I liked what we were talking about the other day when we were saying, all you have to do is say, for instance, this recent election, claim that the people who don't believe it, they're election deniers, they're jab deniers, they're whatever deniers, they're like what they did with Barack Obama, they're deniers that his birth certificate, the birth certificate deniers. All they have to do is say, you're a denier, and then they believe that makes them correct when they're actually, in fact, promoting evil. And this is just a trick. It's a trick of Ahriman and Lucifer creating a duality, but there's not really a duality. There's the other beings called the Asuras who eat your willpower. And so this duality, one demon, Lucifer speaking in one ear, one demon, Ahriman in the other, that's not the way it's supposed to go. That they work together, though they really can't see Christ and they can't actually acknowledge each other much. But the reality is the unseen world has become seen for some of us. So now we have the greatest opportunity in human history to be able to contact the spiritual world beyond the threshold and to be able to communicate with them. And that is the antidote of our age. But is that happening much now? No, it's gone into exactly what Rudolf Steiner said. Ahriman will incarnate in materialism, and particularly in North America, and he's going to start a school of psychism. And everybody's going to be psychic. Everybody's going to be contacting this and that, and knowing their reincarnations and knowing this. And that is the worst type of materialism there is. It's called spiritual materialism. And Rudolf Steiner said, the way you will know it is Ahriman will give them clairvoyance, but no two of them will agree. So it's nothing more than your own created reality projected onto what you think is happening.
So we're going through a time where there's a vacuum now, where we have a little thing here. I went to the national headquarters in Connecticut of Padre Pio the other day. All the prayers I spoke of. Well, we're going through this vacuum where that's all being disregarded, cleared away, Jesus, and all of it is fantasy. And so there's this huge vacuum being created in this time for that time soon to come, where the clairvoyance and then the contact will be. This has to move out of the way first, because it's something that the connection between the spiritual entities and the human being has to be removed in order for Ahriman to bring in his school of psychics. And at that point, that'll be the real religion and reunification. But as you and I were talking on the phone, I think it was yesterday, about doing a program today, we got into the issues of, and again, if you're out there and you're Democrat or you're Republican or whatever, I don't really care what the party is. It would be more about what's going in someone's ear and what they're seeing and how they're equating it to reality, because we're now living in a time also where what we're seeing is not what is being reported or what is being believed. So going back to the belief system, that's why I held up the prayer. We can believe in something invisible if we're religious, no matter what our faith is. But the people that are watching CNN or Fox or whatever station, they're believing what they're seeing, whether it's accurate, true, complete. Because I like to go to this old, they're called the 5 C's. I try to remember them. The 5 C's when you write a letter, it's clear, concise, correct, complete, and cordial. You can be complete and not be concise. You can be concise but not be correct. So all of these, they're called the 5 C's. We learned them in school in English class. And so this is the trick of it all, with news, with information, or if somebody's passing some gossip, you're not getting the whole story. We've lost that ability to ask the questions because we're moving so quick in our time. The people with technology and our lifestyle, that we're not able to stop to ask the question. What did I hear? What does that mean? What's going on? What do they really want? What are they really doing? I'll give you a little antidote here on something I put together and I'll just pick this out because it's not everybody's mind and they can see it, but we'll connect it to what we're speaking about. Donald Trump the other day was really hitting DeSantis hard. Now, this is not political, but this is strategy and seeing the complete picture, when the news will give you pieces of it, but you have to put it together yourself because they won't do it. So he's hitting him hard, calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. And sanctimonious means you believe you're bigger than the others. Now, in fact, DeSantis is taking a lot of money from Never Trumpers and Romney. And they're all getting to get him to run. I doubt he will, but again, this is not about politics. It's about putting pieces together. So I looked and I knew something else that happened a few days ago. DeSantis put out a video. I call it a Jesus video. He has a voiceover and God is talking in the video. And then the Lord had walked. And I'm like, whoa, what is DeSantis doing a holy roller video for in Florida? That's another little piece of information I got fragmented. And so DeSanctimonious means you think you're better than someone. What's the real truth? I said, DeSantis is going after the evangelical vote with Mike Pence behind the scenes, etc. Then I waited for another piece of information to come. And sure enough, Trump had a rally on Saturday, and he has one of these, I forget the name of this televangelist. He came on off the plane, and he spoke at the Texas rally, and I can't stand the guy. He blows. He's 86 years old. He's just nuts. But Trump's got him on stage. I'm like, what the heck is he doing with him? He's never had him before. And sure enough, if I put the pieces together, I find out, and I realize, and you would too, and you will when I tell you this, that Trump knows they're trying to go after the evangelical vote. So he grabs the closest televangelist he can get his hands on, because he can't get his hands on Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife, which are now subject to a Hulu special because of all the sexual things they did. Franklin Graham won't go near him. So he grabs the televangelist and he brings them on stage to send a shot across the bow to DeSantis. And so you've got this secondary and third battle going on in front of the public, but they don't know what's happening. That little microcosm, which everybody could put together in the last week, would make you understand that nothing is being delivered completely. And I'm sure there's more backstory. Well, imagine our science, imagine our medicine, imagine Pfizer being given the ability to put out an experimental drug that wasn't even tried after they had paid hundreds of millions of dollars of fine for fraud on opioids, and we were all supposed to believe it. And so if you look at every little issue, if you can back up and gather the pieces together, you can find out what's going on, which is why Rudolf Steiner says the news media, the news is the threshold. That is what the threshold is. And so I just use some examples because they're modern day and everyone out there driving a car can hear about it on the radio. But what it's about is the fact that everything is fragmented and given in pieces. The truth or the reality or whatever the situation is not being given to us. And these are things that are happening at the speed of light. They can be then turned, twisted. So you have like the Tower of Babel in our psychology for everyone. Nobody can understand each other. We all have nuances on a subject, incomplete. And before we get to figure them out through group over a week, the next day there's another cycle and another cycle and another cycle. So we're just on this big roller coaster, and we have like a madman running the roller coaster in the news media, driving people so they're going back and forth, Lucifer, Arman, Lucifer, Arman, bang, never getting a clear picture of the reality of the material world, never mind the spiritual world. How the heck can anyone rest and have enough time to study Rudolf Steiner in the midst of this insane thing, or any religion or any type of whatever your studies are, to really focus? And that's the key. There's so much chaos and confusion that people are not able to focus, and they're filtering meat byproduct information like it's dog food and meat byproduct, and they don't know what's next. So that's the time we're living in, and it's to the 10th power. And I just wanted to bring that out because it's what we talked about yesterday. We're going to go into now. The public has to understand that you have to do the work yourself. It's not going to be given to you. It's not going to be given to any of us. And we have to struggle and fight for the information on the material plane. Well, it's the same thing on the super sensible plane. We have to fight and struggle to ask the questions and wonder about our faiths and the things that have occurred. Now that all the saints and the churches are gone, they're no longer here. They're just comic strips from the old days as far as the material world is concerned.
So true. Padre Pio was a great healer. He was a very spiritual person. One time I was in someone's house, an Italian lady, and I walked by this thing with a drawer in it, and I said, "Oh, whoa, what's in that drawer?" And she started crying. I said, "What's in that drawer? Something's incredible in the drawer. Show me what's in that drawer. That's amazing." And she starts crying, and she goes, "Do you know what's in there?" I said, "I don't know what's in there, but whatever it is, it's incredibly spiritual, incredibly powerful." She opens it up, pulls out a blessed handkerchief from Padre Pio and says,
Wow.
"When this was given to my mother and I was dying, she put this on my heart, and now I'm alive." And so it's the faith in the unseen. You see, it's no good to have faith based upon physical things, and that's what's happening. Kenneth Copeland,
Right. Kenneth Copeland, exactly. That's the guy.
he's like, all of them. Name one of these televangelists who hasn't got caught stealing the money, having sex with lots of women besides their wife, being a liar, and having their own jet to fly them from, their one congregation to the next, and so on and so forth. So you have the reverse of what's going on now. The Catholic Church is actually preaching pure evil. You got to talk to the Catholics. They don't know that. They believe in faith, which they say you can't have any logic. You can't figure any of this out. You just have to do what the men in dresses, that's what I call priests, the men in dresses tell you what to do. And by the way, you can't get your sins forgiven without us. So you can't go to heaven without us. So we control the gate of heaven. And if you don't tithe and if you don't give money to us, well, then you're going to hell also. But if you say the prayers we give you, it's going to get you indulgences that can get you out of limbo, which is the state between heaven and hell. And Catholics believe you go to limbo. And if you say enough prayers, which the Catholic Church made up, and they're usually to saints or to somebody that is unseen or somebody, you can't prove any of it. And that's supposed to save you. This is the dichotomous world we live in. It is so disturbing that what is supposed to be religion isn't religion. It means relinking. They're not relinking us to the spiritual world. They're not opening supersensible organs for us. They're not teaching us how to do it ourselves. They still are in the old Roman model of 100% control. Only those who are sanctified by the church can actually do anything spiritual. But the reality is that the mainstream media is our religion, that politics has taken over for the sake of religion. Consumerism has taken over for religion. And basically, education has been turned into entertainment. And in America, we aren't happy unless we're having a Disney World experience. You get on the ride, you don't do anything, you don't think, it entertains you, and it's thrilling and exciting, but you have to pay for it. And then you eventually find out that, wait a second, you have Americans who worship Disney World. And I'm not exaggerating. They believe that they haven't been good to their children until they've taken them to Disney World or Disneyland. Because why? That's the Disneyfication of the West. And it's been talked about now because Disney Worlds are opening up in other countries. And what is this? This is the grossest example of not doing the work yourself, sitting back and letting others do it. So what do we do in mainstream media, which is all lies? It's supposed to be there to liberate us plebeians, us common people. It's supposed to stand up for us against what? Government and religion and the aristocracy. That's their job. That's why they were created. They do the opposite. It's just like Washington, D.C. They're supposed to pass laws for our safety, security, for our well-being and our health. They pass laws the exact opposite, and they keep being reelected. So you look at the people who got elected in this recent selection process, because I don't believe in elections, because until there are paper ballots counted by hand, I'm not going to believe a word of it. But what are they trying to teach us? They're trying to teach us that, oh, it was so close. In Michigan, the evil, I'll just call her wretched Gretchen, wins 53% over Tudor Dixon, 43%. I bet you that if I went to every person in the state of Michigan, I couldn't find one person who voted for her. Not one. Now, I used to do this, and you think I'm exaggerating? I'm not exaggerating. I lived in downtown Detroit for many years, 11 years, and Coleman Young was in charge. I used to go to the voting polls, stand outside, you're not supposed to do this, but I wouldn't ask them. I'd say, hey, yeah, I hope you voted for Coleman Young. And they'd go, never. Couldn't find a single person ever in the 11 years I was there and the 10 years or so that he was in charge that ever voted for him. They don't count the votes. There's a certain group of people who come up with a number. And as you know, when Hillary Clinton demanded a recount, she went to Wisconsin first and found that it was a lot of fraud. So she came to Michigan and found that in Detroit, there were more votes cast for her than there are people who live in Detroit, by about 85, 95,000 more. Then that even includes all the children. And that includes supposedly any Republicans that are there and all people. How is it that you will get people saying, dude, you're an election denier, and because the word denier is there, you're evil? No, I'm pointing out the evil, but in this dichotomous world.
You can see what happened in Florida very clearly, and it wasn't DeSantis only that did it. There was so much fraud and problems in 2000 with Al Gore and George Bush. They cleaned the system up. It's transparent. That's the key thing. It's open. You can all see it when you vote. You go right online to see your vote being counted, your own vote, and so it's very quick. It's transparent, and that's why there was such a landslide. We're not seeing these things because these systems are, I'll just say, because I don't know what platforms are on here, these systems are full of fraud, full of anomalies. And I believe Mike Lindell with his lawsuits, which is why they're lingering out there, will end up getting his discovery to be able to go in and see things. They're going to have to show him everything. So people don't realize what's going on. And eventually we will find out that this tinfoil hat position we have as far as the world is concerned this conspiracy will be proven true like every other one. Name me one. Even UFOs are real now, but our elections are not. We're living in an upside down time, and the public, I was talking to someone today, and they were very upset over what happened, or just a lot of things. They said, this is what we're experiencing in this time of the mystery of evil. That's what Rudolf Steiner calls it. We're not under the mystery of death, or we're going through the mystery of evil. These are initiation rites to watch television, know they're lying, see the evidence, and you have to sit there stoically, standing there under a rite of initiation and keep the equanimity of soul that Steiner speaks about in the open-mindedness and the positive thinking. All these exercises that Rudolf Steiner has for thinking, you have to employ them in order to not let your body, your temple, your organism get pulled to and fro by Ahriman and Lucifer and the Azuras that want to. It's not just, I want to fight for justice. And then I would say to that person, how many times in your life have you not fought for justice? And what justice do you think you can bring? So you have to really work on your mind to realize the mystery of evil is for people to learn. And will they learn? Will they wake up? Or will they just be too lazy? And so I adopted a new philosophy the other day, and I may have told you about it, but I've done so much public service and activism. I said, you know what? I'm not here. I'm going to be a prophet. I'm not here to try to do public service and help save someone's soul or inform them so they understand. I'm here to condemn them. I'm here if they don't want to take it, or at least fight on their positions to understand the whole truth, more of it, so they can be objective. Then they're going to be condemned as they reject, not me per se, but any type of thing that asks them to think and to participate in reality. And Americans just don't want to. They just have decided that they want to go to Disney World, they want to go to Six Flags, they want to go to a football game, they want to go do what they got to do. And as far as the Democrat Americans, most of them voting are either government unions for their jobs and their pensions, or they're the permanent welfare class for freebies and healthcare and everything else. So you have a huge portion of this country that's voting for its survival, for its protected classism. And the other half of America is trying to do it part-time. It's like a side gig. And you're never going to defeat that. And I don't think the word defeat should be in there, but you're never going to get a country or policies that are in favor of common sense and reality unless you fight for it. And you can't fight once, like 2016 or whatever the year, and then you win some and you lose it again. And it goes back and forth because the public doesn't want to wake up. We're going to get into in a minute after you do something here on what we're going to talk about on the psychology and the schizophrenia of the voting public.
Well, as we said earlier in a conversation, numbers lie, liars use numbers. So I can sit and watch and know exactly who's going to win before election night. I simply watch the fake numbers from the polls, and they'll start, the one who, Biden, will start. Remember, Biden was down to zero practically, and now he's up to 65% or whatever. You just watch those fake poll numbers, and then when you get closer to the election, they all skew, they all go crazy. But because we believe in numbers, weight, and measure, we believe in materialistic science, people have faith in numbers. Those numbers are the biggest lies on the face of the earth. People don't understand. But just think it through for a second, folks. Why do you think the odds makers, which they call numbers, the numbers dealers, why do you think the odd makers never go bankrupt? Because it's all rigged ahead of time. They're told they're part of the mafia, they're part of the Radhanite Babylonians, they're part of these evil people who use numbers to control people because they have faith in numbers. And as you pointed out, this type of thing is the deprecation of human thinking. Because if you're going to believe for 1 second that anything is open and honest when it comes to gambling, you're mistaken. For instance, let's look at every single sports event that is a major sports event on television, college or professional, doesn't matter. The odds makers are always right. How can that be? They don't lose. How can that be? Because it's rigged. Take Brady, right? Oh, the best quarterback in the whole world until he changes teams, and now he can't win a game. And they literally are now going to knock him out. Recently, they came up with a scam to steal all of the money he ever made. He will have zero money. Why? Because he went against them and he changed teams, and it was all rigged. And you watch those games; they're all rigged. And look at college football. They now allow the football stars who are supposed to be there getting an education to be paid privately if they're in the sports arena. Hello? The more they pay them, the more they can rig the game. So it just confirmed that the numbers game, the betting game, is completely rigged. And so it shows that faith in numbers is the worst thing you could possibly do in this age in America.
Well, there's also a saying in the television business, which I'm in, that says the camera never lies. The camera always lies. It can only lie. Right now, our images are in two-dimensional space. We're three-dimensional beings. It is lying. You're not seeing the truth of what I look like or what you look like. In reality, the complete picture, you'd have to be in the three-dimensional realm. So the camera only lies. But these lies that are put out in cliches that are put out all across the spectrum, people buy them. They don't know what to do, so they feed them cliches. They feed them slogans. They feed them sound bites. They feed them memes. This is the world we're living in right now. It's like almost like hieroglyphics. And again, we're in the fifth epic, the vibration of the third, which is Egypt. So you're seeing hieroglyphics. You're seeing actually people being embalmed while they're living. While they're living, they're being embalmed, and the refusal to think. What do you think the embalmment is? Surrounded by all of the things in their possessions. If you look at the third epoch and the fifth epoch, for those who know what we're talking about, it's evident. You'll see this all play out again. So this is why the spiritual information that anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner bring is it's so helpful, because it works on us and our ability to piece together, like I was doing with Kenneth Copeland and Donald Trump and DeSantimonious and his Jesus campaign video, and putting the pieces together, if you're interested to put them together. And they, a lot of people say, well, so not clear. It is very clear. The intentions will show you that it's clear if you're objective. And again, that's one of those 5 exercises. Clear thinking, open-mindedness is positive thinking, looking to see something good and something completely wrong. All of Steiner's 5 exercises, and the 6 is a combination, are so good to get the discipline that it takes to take a look at issues. So you could still be a Democrat or a Republican or anything. Nothing really matters where you stand. And for whatever reasons, you have to make peace with what you see and decide why you're there. I think pretty soon people are just going to give up voting if they don't clean it up. And if they don't do what Florida's doing in 5 hours, we have, like the old days, our paper ballots. And why don't we know? Why don't we know? Why has it been all done? It was supposed to be quicker. It isn't quicker. So again, why isn't Nancy Pelosi's husband's body cam from the police open and transparent? Why aren't the footage of Mar-a-Lago with the Trump rally? Why isn't that open? Why is it out? Why would you conceal? What seeks to conceal and then cause a debate over things when it's concealed? And so the truth is out there, but piece by piece. And then we're left alone until we gather together in programs or in circles with people speaking about the issues that are affecting them. But we're moving to a time right now that's very dangerous between now and 2030, because I believe the deliberating, I can't even speak today. I was up half the night last night watching these election things.
Plus, you've been interviewed 3 times already on major television and everything else. So I know you've been very busy. That's why I call you the man on the street.
The people are falling apart mentally, and they don't know, and everybody knows that they don't know. They have no North Star, no sextant, no way to know what they're good, and they have what they have, but they're being completely bombarded from every direction. It's increasing in this winter with the oil prices. While we're suffering more and more, the public just chose to accept it and think that Putin caused the oil, COVID caused the inflation, and the border is open because of Donald Trump. I mean, this is how mentally ill the public has become, when the facts are there, even on CNN, but the public would believe that. And it's Stockholm syndrome is increasing. And so if you look at the pathology of Americans, let's just go with America here right now. I don't see them coming back. I think the Democrats will continue to bring in another sick, twisted, perverted policy coming down the pike to push the threshold of something evil and get everybody to swallow it or be afraid to speak against it. When they're educating your children and grooming them in grade school about sexual acts, that in all that whole world, what's next? And so as they do that, more and more you're going to be faced with the evil and the inability to confront it, the injustice, everything is wrong. And it's like, in high school, when people start having sex, or they smoking pot, or whatever happens, and in the old days, and this one does it, and that one does it, for everybody's doing it. So that's that same syndrome that's happening. Everyone's going to think wrong. Just get on this bandwagon, and we're all going to try. We're all going to do it. The heck with whatever is right or wrong. And this Pope of relativism that John Paul spoke about is gaining power.
Yes, Rudolf Steiner said, don't believe a word he says. Absolutely, if you're using faith to follow what he says, you're doing it wrong. He says you must listen to what he says. He doesn't give you any rules. He characterizes things so that you can think it through. And then you yourself must apply it in the real world. And if you can't apply it in the real world, it is not spiritual. And what do they do now? They say, have faith in me, because we've bifurcated America into a dual party. Both, of course, lie, but whoever you identify with, you by faith believe in their numbers. You will ignore all other numbers. For instance, if you believe in the inventor of this jab, if you believe in the warp speed program, then you have to ask the question, if you're on the opposite side, well, then why doesn't Trump look at the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event System, which has listed millions of people who've had adverse events and died? But if you listen to Trump and you believe in Trump, you have faith in Trump, what are you really told? He's telling you, believe him, not one person has been harmed. It's safe and effective. He had the shots. Don't you worry. It's all safe and effective. That's what evil Fauci says. That's what the CDC says. And it's complete nonsense. Come on, we can go and look, and then we can actually, I brought out their own statement stating that the VAERS reports of adverse events, which is usually only about 5 to 10% of people really recording what happens. They have come out and said it is over 6 times the amount blamed upon that virus than really happened. So here we have numbers. And what's going to happen? You have one side says, those numbers are lies. I'm going to ignore them because I have faith in the other numbers, though I'm not going to look them up. I'm not going to do any homework. I'm not going to try to apply any of my intuition about what's right. I'm simply going to give myself over, just as people in the past gave themselves over to men in dresses, the Catholic Church, and they believe them. Now, if you believe what the Pope says, now, Pope John Paul II was a saint as far as I'm concerned, but the new Pope Francis and the one before him, and they're basically preaching immorality, genocide, and the destruction of all nations. If you break it down, you go, wait a second, this is the opposite of what they're supposed to be doing. Same thing with politics in America. I always say that we are Rome burning and our politicians are playing the violin, and no one is trying to put the fire out, because some people still believe in Nero.
So I'm looking at the screen, and we'll just do this in real time. As you're speaking, I'm listening. I'm looking at this. I'm not sure what the public can see, but there's 2 pictures of us, and there's a background with a blue sky with a little white clouds, and underneath it's yellow. And so I'm using the observation of science, and I said, that looks like the flag from Ukraine. Now I'm not. Now she hit it. She zoomed in on us. But the point is, of course, it's not. But so observation, questioning, wondering what the effect is, what the colors mean. No, really, even though they are what they are, how we're being played with subliminal messages, with patterns, with the slogans, and how this is moving so quickly into our, and for those who may understand, something called the mechanization of the etheric body. This is why images are done through marketing from anything, Calvin Klein logos, and they're put in into, and these are the 3 keys of marketing. It's called message. It could be a photograph, but it's a message. Frequency, how many times you see the message, and reach, where the message is and how far it goes, over and over and over. And so you have that. There's a mechanization of that in television, all types of advertisements, which is why money is spent so much to impress into our psyche, but coming through our etheric body, which Madison Avenue doesn't know exists. Okay. And so they don't know what somebody knows it exists. Somebody knows what's going on. And they wouldn't spend billions and billions of dollars a year for advertising if it didn't work. But why would they push all these things in school or all these movies in Hollywood that are horrible with all the sex and drugs and all the billions behind that and not think that's working on our psyche? Think about that. Why would Madison Avenue do it and get its results? Hollywood do it randomly and it has a different result. But if you take a look at the, to stay on subject over here, the mechanization of the images, as we're getting images who are etheric from the cloud, from the real cloud, through Christ, through our guardian angel, things are coming into us. There is forced on us more and more, the beast, the image of the beast, these mechanized images over and over the logo of Fox News, this logo of CNN. I don't care what it is. We're being bombarded. If you close your eyes and you're on Facebook a lot or Twitter, you'll see that you close your eyes and at night and you'll see you're still scrolling. You're scrolling at night. What's that scrolling? Or if you hear a Beatles song or some song and it's in your head and the images are in your head, what is inside your body and coming into your mind? This is really what's occurring. And I'm under a belief, it's my little theory that enough of that comes in is actually, and I want Doug to talk about this, is actually changing. I won't call it the brain structure, but the blood flow, the brains, I'll just say that development, or even if you're older, the capillaries and the synapses that firing, enough imagery comes in, and then all of a sudden there is no connection between this thought and that thought. And when you talk to people about an objective reality, question and wonder, they blow a gasket because you're trying to put something in that can't mechanically go through because they have been programmed. The programming through the etheric, and I want Doug to really elaborate on this because he's the king of this. How the etheric through the brain structure and what that does to the ego and the astral body, and how people, everybody is programmed unless they fight back this programming every day, like Samson with the jawbone of an ass against the Philistines, killing 1,000 of them. These marketing messages coming through to keep them to stand on that hill and make sure that the ego is still the king of the Grail Castle, rather than the overrunning thought forms and memes and different subliminal messages that are trying to mechanize and climb over the walls of our mind. I'm going to hand it off to you because you've done a show on this before, some of this.
Well, we've written intelligence reports showing people that they don't get to think anymore, because since 1969, silent subliminal programming has been in every commercial of every major corporation and is used in every single administration during campaigns. So you are being hypnotized. Sorry. And what happens when you're hypnotized? They take over, so you don't have any more logic. You're not allowed to have feelings. And hypnotism controls your willpower. So it controls all aspects, and it blocks you from getting to your etheric body, because your etheric body is born with spiritual wisdom and it serves you your whole life. It actually is born very old. Your etheric body, when you're born, is ancient. And by the time you die, it's become a child again. But we aren't allowed to contact that because we are being hypnotized by the 80% of sense perception that comes through your eyes. So computer generated images, deep fakes, subliminal programming, and there's literally hundreds. We've done intelligence reports where we literally had to stop because, it was 50 pages long, telling you all of the different mechanisms to propagandize you and to control you. And that is completely legal by the National Defense Authorization Act. We are now, any administration can propagandize America to make them follow their administrative policies. It's right in the NDAA. And basically, we don't have any more freedom. If whatever it is you're looking at that comes through a digital form it's basically bastardized, and it is essentially stealing your humanity. You're not allowed to have logic because they give you so much information, so many statistics, so many numbers, and so much proof. But on both sides, they do that. Which are you supposed to believe? That's called cognitive dissonance. It is on purpose. It's to get you to the point that you don't think, you don't feel, you just do what you're told. And how is it that some people decide between these? It's really a uniparty, but how do you decide between these supposed two factions that are supposedly fighting, which they're not? Because anytime they need a Republican to be a rhino and vote for the Democrats, it happens. Anytime they need a Democrat to vote for, it's completely rigged. Okay, so there's no politician telling you any truth. If they're in their second term, they're frauds and they're corrupt. And in fact, they're voting for laws that are demonic. Rudolf Steiner says lies, and that's what we're talking about. These are lies. These lies, first off, start from a religious moral point of view, because that engages your entire being. And the more, when you're thinking a moral thought or thinking about God or anything spiritual, there's more firing going on in your neurons in your head than at any other time.
Right. That's what I
So
was getting at. That's what I was getting at that point right there. Go ahead.
yes, and so what they've done now is they're able to inject into commercials moral thoughts into your head by basically capitalizing on what people used to believe. Now they're finding that doesn't work so well anymore, but they do know that if they add God or an image of God, and some religions don't believe in images of God, so that creates a problem for them, so they can't control all of humanity. But they do this on purpose so that you have a willpower that says, okay, I am completely overwhelmed by this. I can't figure out falsehood politics or the post truth age. I can't figure out all the data coming in. Is what he just told me about VAERS true? Well, good luck trying to find it on the VAERS site. First off, it's all hidden, it's all disinformation, it's all trying to distract you. But when it comes down to it, the human being in America makes a decision not based on logic, not based upon what they feel, but based upon what they want to do, which isn't happening now. It's their hope that they would be free to do whatever. And this turns into the deprecation of humanity and the human ego by all of the characteristics that are opposite of humanity now becoming politically correct. That they have to, the liars have to say that the lies are true. And then what happens? Your willpower engages, and you're going, and then people say, Antifa is not violent. Black Lives Matter is not prejudice. The Democrats aren't promoting anything bad. The Republicans aren't promoting anything. And so you get caught in what you think you would like to do. It's not that you're doing it. It's not that you get to do it. It's that your hopes and dreams are all based upon not even figuring out the lies, not figuring out the way they're emotionally controlling everyone and literally hypnotizing them, but just simply hoping to have freedom, which we no longer have in America. And so what's going on is the deprecation of humanity and a devolution. Humanity is not evolving now. In many cases, probably 2/3 of humanity is devolving. Because why? They've been hypnotized. What happens when you wake up someone who's been hypnotized before they're given the keyword to bring them out of hypnotism? Violence. If you've ever seen this, and I've seen this many times because I used to always go, because I was trained as a hypnotist, and I'd go and I'd see people do this. I didn't do it for people. I just wanted to see how it worked. If you see a hypnotist go bad on stage with the person becomes violent. And literally, I've literally watched this happen and then went around with that person and said, why did you do that? What happened? The person in the next couple days becomes so violent, so illogical, so angry that they strike out against the world and they don't know why. It's because they woke up from being hypnotized. So
So
can we wake up humanity? Good luck.
it's self-preservation kicks in, but because our memories are not stored in the brain, this is probably the greatest lie we've ever taught. Where in your brain, what gray matter is actually storing all these images that my phone, wherever it is, can store? I don't know, what did I buy? I bought a 500 gig iPhone. And do you think there's 500 gigs or 25,000 gigs or whatever in your brain? Where are the memories stored? Again, it's amazing that it's done in the public. It's a magic act. The whole damn thing is a magic act. So when these sense impressions come in, that's what I was getting at earlier, and you hit upon the neurons. This is a mechanical function where you can actually engage the ego in the blood and the nerves coming through this brain. They're not stored in here, okay? And so it is totally a super sensible reality. We're speaking with words and memories that have nothing to, they're not in this body of mine or Doug's. Well, where are they being stored? What cloud? What real cloud are they being stored in? And so the interference comes from when we use the sensory, we begin seeing in the body, in the interior life, it isn't able to connect. And so the connection from the brain is what I was getting is are atrophying. There are capillaries and there are parts of the structure of the brain that, because there's such a super sensible impression on a super sensible being over and over, that these rivers have dried out, like the Colorado and the Mississippi are drying out. And there's now no longer the ability, like someone who's severely autistic or has a severe development problem with their brains. This is what's occurring to people. So the hardware is no longer capable. and we can't come back, which is going to lead in this next epic of Raphael, the next archangel after Michael in a few hundred years, to come in with diseases and bacterium. Spider speaks all about this. Well, how is that all going to start? It's starting right now. It's happening now by the human being not being able to function in complete consciousness objectively. They're beginning the process, and there'll be a breakdown that's going to go into other aspects, which that's for another show. But you can see that not only is this, and in a 400 years, do you think they'll be talking about the fact that the propaganda and Madison Avenue and the marketing and what they're doing is subliminal messages and all these things we're discussing that were the cause? I think at that time they'll probably know. And like we look back now and realize that what were they spraying the people with during the World War II, DDT or something, when they had in Italy, when they had lice after the war, and we find out, oops, this is what we did. So there's going to be a lot of oops coming in the future, or you can wake up now. But something you said earlier is really important. They don't want to allow us to have religion ourselves and connect to the spiritual world, the super sensible world. They're letting us go to Home Depot and build our houses. They're letting us, Amazon, they're letting us do it yourself on a lot of things, but they won't let us do it ourselves with God.
That's for sure. If they could outlaw God, they would. But then if we outlawed God, then we'd know God existed, and then we'd know evil existed, and that would blow evil's biggest methodology, which is to hide. If you don't believe evil exists, then neither does the spirit. And nowadays, because everything is bifurcated, if you say something someone doesn't like, what do they say to you? You're evil. And they really 100% believe you are evil, but that's not what it's about. And memory, Rudolf Steiner says, memory is not stored in your body. Your brain is not a computer. Your liver is not a chemical production factory. Your heart is not a pump. All that's complete materialistic stupidity. Here's the reality. And, I'm doing these shows where, unfortunately, I'm telling people about my life. And I'll tell you a little page of my life. And that's that I have been trained by other people who had photographic memories how to do that. And this is what they say. Don't put it in your brain. You put it outside of yourself. You give it over to Christ, because Christ is the group soul of the higher ego of all human beings and keeps the memory of every true thing in your heart. But your heart moves from your heart here and it moves up to your head and actually goes behind your head. People will call this, not just the crown chakra, but another one on top of that. And that's where the memory is stored. Now, I know this is true because when I met these people who had that capacity, when they would go into the memory, they would simply look like this. They'd be looking backwards and up. Because why? They're going into the group soul memory. For us, for some of us, it's Christ. For others, it's, with these are Tibetan Buddhists, so they believe it's Manjushri, actually, the being of wisdom. And so there's this kind of cone. And so they wear those hats. All the Tibetans wear those hats. That's a picture of what's called the tingli. It's the picture of the memory body of the group soul of the Tibetans. Memory is not stored in your body. That is complete nonsense. It is outside of your body. And when I learned this, I'm diminished in capacities these days, but it used to be that I could remember anything that I decided to remember, because why? I didn't put it in my head. And I didn't do it just by blocking it out and walking it like you do in drama. I didn't do it by repetition of the heart. I did it because I said, if this is truth, I'm hanging on to this and I'm offering up to the group soul so that everyone who connects that group soul can connect to that truth memory. And that's where it's stored.
I called it the cloud. I said the real cloud. He will come again in the cloud. Or, you store the video here today up in the cloud. The real cloud. It's amazing how Arwen mimics heaven. It's just amazing how that's done. But I had a couple of epiphanies this week, and I think everybody, I love to hear in the comment section random epiphanies that you have, because this is something we have a few minutes left. I think is so important. Today's a kind of a collage of a lot of stuff on this show, but random things that happen to you that you think aren't connected with anything today in your life, but they pop in. And you can wake up with them. You could dream of them. They could just come on while you're shaving. You never can tell. And it happens to you with anthroposophy because it's so, if you're wondering a lot, and if you're questioning, you're interested and you're wondering, you're opening right up to the spiritual world. I don't know how this one came in, but I realized and I heard, and I do that when I'm early in the morning, I can hear I'll just call it hearing. Here's what I heard, something so fascinating, so simple. But in the story of Christ, and in all of the Old Testament, who was coming, the Savior, and then Christ is born and he has a mission. And he says, I've come into this world for this. They're preparing him. He's from the other side. He's not in this world right now. And there is a reason for his life. Now, this is so simple. It may sound like it's nothing, but there's a reason for each one of our lives. And right now, our world doesn't tell us that. It's against that. The reason, the purpose, we will decide in school and education, and we'll study you to see your temperaments. We'll put you like a lab rat, and then the teachers first, second, third, fourth grade will hone you. And of course, that's important. But the fact is, we have a meaning for our life, and Jesus Christ had a meaning for his life and a purpose and a mission. It is accomplished, he said when he died. That simple thing was delivered to me, and I can't convey it through a show, but so how important it was. If his life had a reason and a meaning, ours does too, as an example. And it will evaporate in your mind what I say. It will be discounted and you'll forget it. It won't mean anything. But it's, for me, because there was a connection made, it was proof. It was spiritual, invisible, super sensible proof that concept of his life had a meaning. Our lives have a meaning. Again, I can't make it big enough how it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yes, it's a great point. And science tells us that you are a speck of dust on an insignificant planet and around a very small sun, small star that really doesn't do anything. And you're way out on the edge of the galaxy, and basically you're nothing. And how do they do it? With lies. They do it with numbers and they do it with images. And so now the Webb telescope has supposedly discounted almost everything Hubble told us when they put Hubble. And so Hubble, which was really a visual telescope, actually did have images. Now that's an infrared telescope. So all those beautiful images they're giving you, that's nonsense. That's not true. That's a lie.
The camera never lies. The telescope never lies, right?
Correct. That's what they would tell you. It's science. It's settled science. I want to point out, there's no theory that has lasted more than 100 years. There's no such thing as settled science. And even when they say that they can mathematically prove that a black hole sucks in all this stuff and it goes nowhere, or it goes to 11 different string theory dimensions, or it goes here or it goes there, complete insanity. It's very clear where things go when they go into a supermassive black hole in the middle of a galaxy. It goes to a galaxy that has an ion jet coming out, which is, and they still won't admit this, though they now, with the Webb, they say, we have seen where the supermassive black hole in the center of a galaxy is. Sometimes these things called ion jets or relativity jets go out, and they go out sometimes 100 times more length than the entire galaxy itself. And then they turn invisible, and where do they go? They go to the heart of other galaxies. So when one black hole is sucking it up, an ion jet is kicking it out, and now the Webb telescope has said and told us, proved, this is settled science, that ion jets create stars. That means the Big Bang is insanity. But hey, if you believe the math that they tried to give you to say that in the palm of your hand was a little ball, it's right there, that exploded and turned into our entire universe.
Yeah.
If you believe that, then you'll believe all the lies. But the reality is, if you get the truth, you get it for everybody permanently. That's why, as a psychic,
yes.
I could go into this thing, and as the Tibetan, they have 84,000 rituals. Some of these Tibetans they've memorized 100 rituals, every single word in a complicated ritual. And if you say, how do you memorize that? They laugh at you. I didn't memorize it. It's part of my, they don't say the word group soul, egregore, but they say it's part of the tradition, right? And so I'd sit there and watch them, and I could literally read out of that back part of their head what they were going to say next. It's written there because it's truth. It's imprinted, as Rudolf Steiner called it, the theory of spiritual economy. Once a truth has been truly found and perfected by a human being. It's written into the etheric of the earth and in their own etheric body, but it's there for everyone.
It's
And
there
so the
for
lies, they have to push at you. But the truth, anyone can attain the truth. And it isn't through your head. It's not through logic. It's not even by working the opposite, saying, oh, this is the post-truth age. So whatever they say, it's the opposite, though that is true.
well,
You have to see the truth, and you have to see it, as you call it, in the cloud, or as I would call it, in the etheric heart.
well, here's my second and final one. I had another one happen to me. Again, these are random. I don't know what you would call them. And I do in the beginning was I read it every day. Well, I actually have it memorized, the first 23 verses of John 1. And in the beginning was the Word. And this does work on you, as Rudolf Steiner speaks about. It's fantastic. You never can tell what's going to come through. But I again, I didn't hear it this time. I saw whoever wrote that just as a materialist. I'm looking at things now from a materialist point of view. I've been doing that lately to see what they're looking at. In the beginning was the Word. Well, where was this person witnessing this in the beginning? Because they must have been outside to see something start. You can't be inside looking back knowing it's a beginning on a number line, because you wouldn't know. You can't look far that back. Well, what beginning? You'd have to be outside of envy. It's much more mysterious than this, but just that little simple, I call it the materialistic science, kicker. If I want to disprove something, a scientist should say to me, well, what in the beginning? Because they could not be within looking back as part of now. It would have to be a view from outside and see when something starts. It's like a road race and the track, and you're over in a helicopter looking down and they start. You can't see a beginning when you're in it. And so again, that leads to something else. But it's amazing the breakthroughs and the things, the inspirations that come. You can meditate on them for years, like the Tibetans do. You can spend years on one phrase and never be bored. That's how much fruit is within each mystery. And we're in a time when it's just flying over everybody's head. There is just no time. When we were younger, things were slower. There was more space and time to do things, but we're just reaching an acceleration point now when I don't know how people could consume the information required and try to cope with the outside world.
Well, you hit it on the head. The creative word is the life ether. In India, she was a goddess named Vak. She spoke and creation came into existence. So we have that capacity. And that's when you literally get the true, absolute truth and it gets imprinted in the etheric. That is the creative word. Nowadays, what's it all about? Destroy the meaning of every word and make sure people understand that their words mean nothing because lies rule the day. So if you're going to be speaking the truth, well, then you're just stupid and get out of my way. I am going to conquer the world and I'm going to tell whatever lie I need to. So this is the sad reality that we're in, that the truth parades, falsehood parades as truth. People who are supposed to be religious are actually leading you into pure evil and the devil. And then materialistic science that tells you all this stuff as settled science, completely the opposite. So that's okay because it gives people like us and the other third of humanity that is waking up the reality that this world is not where you are imprinting your spiritual work. So every night that you sleep, every time you go into meditation or you do spiritual rituals, and you can cross that threshold between the seen and the unseen, you are carrying the creative word with you. And if you have some morality, you will bring back the communication, the language of the language of the spirit, which is, of course, the creative word or the logos, as you were just quoting John. And that is what has been lost in our age. We have lost even the necessity to speak the truth, forgetting that the truth is what gives you life. It gives you your nourishment. It gives you everything you need to live, not food, not the material world. It's what's unseen that actually feeds you.
Yes, and the word being Jesus, I'll use the old Catholic stuff, and so Mary Sophia being the meaning. Jesus is the word, she is the meaning, the content. And so divorcing meaning, Christ from his mother, If you look at it another angle, another way, is what our time is looking to do. Change it as long as it does. It can have any meaning except for the one that it truly has. And it means nothing. Again, going back to John Paul, what he calls the Pope of relativism, let anything be anything, almost like the Lemurian age when Rudolf Steiner says everything was mating with everything during the time of Lemuria, which is why you could have rocks with grass growing out of them and all these things we see in nature at a different time in the kingdoms or a different state. There's another recapitulation of the dark forces that are here, that are looking to create new creations that are abominations, going back to our other lecture, and removing the meaning and putting anything except for the true meaning, the marriage. Again, it goes back to the Grail, the chemical wedding. All of it goes back to make marriages, families, and the group, the family of individuals you said over the Tibetan's head, where everyone could come in. And so it's an attack on multiple fronts through multiple religions and old ways you can still find and decipher what's occurring. But the key for everyone at home, no matter where you are with anthroposophy, listening out there, or whatever stream of spiritual knowledge that you're seeking and meditating on, it doesn't matter the party, it doesn't matter the label, how you go about it. It's the fact that you wonder, that you're interested in the spiritual world, you're interested in communicating so that you can reach up. We cannot, as Rudolf Steiner says, achieve anything higher if we don't believe there's anything higher.
I called you at the opening, or a man on the street, but it looks like we've gone to explaining the path to heaven, the road to hell, and everything in between. So, Joe, conversations with you are always an eye opener, an ear opener, and a heart opener. And it's very helpful to get the perspective of somebody who has been not only an Emmy Award winning producer, a musician, you name it. Joe's been it. And he really is a person on the street who can also tell you that the path to heaven is wide, but the gate and the road to go through that gate is very narrow. And that's what we're describing today. So thank you, Joe. We sure appreciate you. And we sure appreciate the way that you bring the news from the street to us so that we can go from the street to that road to heaven.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed.